Hey there, Real Estate Junkies. Before we dive into today's episode, we've got some game-changing resources to help you start buying and selling real estate on terms, the smart, creative way. Want to learn how to invest with little or no money down? Grab your free ebook, The 4 Game Plans, and discover the exact strategies we use every day. Get it now. The link is in the show notes. Looking for a complete step-by-step system to start making 3 paydays per deal? Check out the Quantum Leap System, our home study course packed with everything you need to close your first terms deal. Need a personalized strategy? Book a free one-on-one strategy session with one of our coaches. Just use coupon FREE3 at checkout. Ready to take action? Join the 3 Payday Apprentice Program and start working toward real estate success with direct mentorship. Want hands-on training with us? Spend 3 days at our In the Trenches Bootcamp, where we'll work side by side to lock in deals. And don't miss our biggest event of the year, QOS Live 2025. Connect with top investors, sharpen your skills, and take your business to the next level. Secure your spot today. All links are right below in the show notes. Click now and start building your real estate empire. Now, let's get into today's episode. Because we're up front in the beginning. We tell them in the very beginning, like when I get a new student, the second week I have them, and I get all the associates that come in for the first 4 weeks. The second week, I go over the numbers. This is what it's going to take to get a deal. You need X amount this, X amount this, X amount this in order to get a deal. What's your goal? And we go over the goals. Okay, you want how many, and then we go over how much they're going to make if they hit those goals. So they know coming in, this is nothing new. It's not shocking that we always KPIs with them and say, you need to make at least a minimum of 100 if you want to be considered active at least. 30 is really not active. Like you said, if you're making 8 dials, that's about 10 minutes worth a day. Welcome back, everybody. The Real Estate Junkies, coast to coast. I'm your co-host on the West Coast, Rusty Ham.
And I'm Rick Abbiati from the East Coast, New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. Rick, I have a sweatshirt on. I don't know why. It's 90 degrees outside. My wife is like, why are you have a sweatshirt on? It's comfortable. And I have the fan on, which is good, but it's starting to toast. It's starting to get a little toasty out here in the SoCal area. How's it going out there?
Damp and dreary and in the 60s, but hey, that's not bad.
Way to promote the Northeast. Nobody's going to want to move out there when it's June, damp and gloomy. Anyway, we have riots going on here in LA, so you don't want to come out here.
No, definitely not.
All right, this is not a political show, so we won't get into it. Rick, so we're having our weekly calls. A lot of times our podcast kind of revolves around what's going on in our community, right? And what's going on in our community is we have KPIs, right? Key performing indicators. They're very predictable, right? And we can do those numbers in a bit, but mindset wise, talk about why it's important to keep track and why that's important for the mindset, not necessarily skill set. Skill set, it's easy, right? Skill set is you make dials, you make your phone calls, you have your script. Talk about the KPI and mindset behind it.
So your mindset, of course, is a driving force behind everything you do. If we come into the community and you obviously get involved for a reason, and that comes down to your why. Most people don't really understand what their why is until they really dig deep into it, because that's what's going to, when your why becomes emotional, that's what's going to drive you and will get you through those tough times. But beyond that, when you break that down, you look at, well, what's it going to take to do that? What's it going to take to achieve that why or your goals? And then you break that down, and what it ultimately breaks down to is KPIs, your key performance indicators. So when when we break down in our boot camps, our ITTBs, in the trenches boot camps, we break that down. Your goals, we figure out how many deals it's going to take to accomplish that. And then how many properties will be under contract, how many leads it's going to take to get those property under contract, and ultimately how many phone calls or dials that you'll need to do that. So when things aren't happening, by looking at your KPIs, we can find out exactly what's going on.
Yeah, there's a glaring hole, and you caught that on one of your weekly calls this week. So for the listener out there, in our community, it's around 60. We call them leads, and they're a combination of passive and active. Active are people that we're actively following up with, sending out offers. Passive are people that have realtors that they're rented it out, they sold it, but they're pending, or if it's a known out right now. So 60 leads a month is typically get you a deal a month, meaning you're going to, out of 60 leads, you should be going on at least 4 to 5 appointments a month. Is that accurate?
Yep. Usually
Okay.
4 appointments. Yep.
Yeah. So if you break it down that way, in order to get 60 leads, this is per month. If you want a deal a month, right? It's right around 300 to 350 dials per week in order to kind of capture that 60 to 70 leads per month. So describe the associate that, we're not name names, we don't call people out, but describe that conversation you had on your weekly call today.
So what we do during our weekly calls, we go over KPIs for everybody. Everybody submits a weekly report, and on the weekly report, it's at 34 dials. And I kind of looked at that and I thought, you need to go back to your why. And 34 dials, you should be on track for at least 100 dials a week. It's not hard to achieve. What we do is we dial in what we call dialing sprints, which is 50 minutes. Everybody should be able to get 50 minutes out of a day, most days. So that's 5 hours a week. And in that 5 hours, you can get 100 dials in. That's at least 20 to 25 to 35 dials in a 50-minute dialing sprint. So 34 dials is, what is it, 8 dials a day, 10 minutes to achieve your goals in your why.
Yeah. So there's a glaring hole, right? So I just talked about 300 to 350 per week. That will net you probably 15 to 18 leads a week, right? Which gets you to your 60, 70 leads a month to achieve your goal. Now, if you don't want a deal a month, again, we talk about goals and their whys. Not everybody wants 12 deals a year. Some may want 6. So you just divide all those in half, right? So if you want 6 deals, then you're going to do 150 dials or 100 to 150 dials a week. And that'll get you're probably, your 4 to 6 deals a year, right? So for him to do just 34, right? He's looking at 1.
And the leads came out of that.
Yeah. So he's looking at minimum 1 for the year, right? So, and then these are the questions that we ask him too. We're blunt. One of our core values is blunt to the point, right? Clear, blunt, to the point. So one of the questions probably was asked is, okay, is your goal 1 a year? Because if it's 1 a year, then you're on track. Good job, buddy. I'll help you through it. When you get that 1, I'll help you through it. But 30 to 35 dials a week is not going to achieve anything. So then that's what you tell them. You need to revisit your why, because 30 to 34 dials in the week is not going to cut it. So you either need to, and we tell this to associates all the time, you either need to drop your goal, your expectations to meet your activity, or you need to increase your activity to meet your expected goals. Now, in his case, he needs to drop his goal. If he had a goal of 4 deals for the year, he needs to drop it to 1, because his activity is that's what it is. His activity is 1 deal a year.
I kind of, the other way I look at it is, we all get into business for a reason. And, people look at buying franchises or any other business. So if you were your own employee, how would you rate yourself? That's the first thing. The second thing is, if your income relied solely on your business, would you be making $34 a week? You got to get yourself into reality. Why would you spend $50,000 do that number of dials a week? And I can totally relate. When I first started, I did 8 to 10 dials a day. And I was asked that, how many dials a day do you do? And I proudly said 8 to 10, and I got called out on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very expensive paperweight, right? $50,000 to get coaching, and you don't do anything. That's just sitting there, taking up space. So yeah, huge point, right? It's your why. Now everyone's going to have an excuse. Well, I have a W-2 that gets in the way. Okay, then why did you join? Like then why did you do this if you knew that your time was going to be limited, right? Because we're upfront in the beginning. We tell them in the very beginning, like when I get a new student, the second week I have them, and I get all the associates that come in for the first 4 weeks. The second week I go over the numbers. This is what it's going to take to get a deal. You need X amount this, X amount this, X amount this in order to get a deal. What's your goal? And we go over their goals. Okay, do you want how many, and then we go over how much they're going to make if they hit those goals. So they know coming in, this is nothing new. It's not shocking that we go over these KPIs with them and say, you need to make at least a minimum of 100 if you want to be considered active, at least. 30 is really not active. Like you said, if you're making 8 dials, that's about 10 minutes worth a day. That's not going to cut it. Yeah, if you're spending 10 minutes a day on your business, it's not going to happen.
And it's not a business. It's at that many dials or that low number of dials. You're not even treating it as business or treating it seriously.
Yeah, you got to find a way, right? I found a way. I was a full-time teacher and a coach. I picked times throughout my teaching in between classes or at lunch to make dials. I found a way, right? You found a way. I know you worked at home the majority of the time towards the end, but you still had the W-2. You still had to work.
Right.
It wasn't like you had all day. I'm sure you had some bits and pieces in there where you were double dipping, where you're supposed to be working, but you were dialing.
I never did that.
You're retired. You can admit to it now. Come on, Rick.
But yeah, there's a reason, when I got dialed in the systems and everything else that we do, I wanted people to be blunt with me, call me out. If I'm not doing what I need to be doing, if I'm doing what it takes, call me out on it.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Let's pivot to so that was our warm up. And it's more of a mindset, right, than it is skill set. Skill set is keeping track. That is a skill set, because a lot of people don't keep track, right?
And the skill set, it's also skill set because you get good at the scripts if you're making enough dials.
Right. Yeah, that's important. If you're making dials, or if you're making the number of dials that are expected, you're going to get better on the phones, which means that you're going to get more deals because you're going to be more confident, right? Yeah, if you're only making 30 and you're not talking, because listen, let's talk. Only 10 to 15 are going to pick up, right? So if you're making 35 dials, and let's say it's 15% are going to pick up, only 5 people. You're going to only talk to 5 people in the whole week. That's 1 person a day, and out of those 5. Like you said, he didn't get any leads, right? So, like, if you're talking to 5 people, then you got to increase it. So in order to be active, like we said, you got to be doing at least a minimum of 100, which you're going to talk to 15 people and you're going to get about 5 leads. 2 of those are going to be pretty active or hot. We call them active leads. Yeah. And the more you dial, the better you get on the phones and the more confident. And that could be a thing too. Maybe he's just not confident.
Yeah.
Right. And so how do you get confident? You role play with other associates within the community. You listen to live seller calls and you dial more, right? So there's ways to get more confident.
Yeah.
Some people who aren't confident shut down. They're like, well, I'm fearful that I'm going to make mistakes on the phone, rather than, because he used to, I don't know if he does it to you, but he used to send in tons of calls. And I used to critique a ton of his calls. I'm not sure how many calls he's sending in to you. By you smirking, I can tell that he's not sending in as many calls. He used to send in like 3 a week.
Yeah.
So he started out hot, and then now he's not.
I mean, we all get it. When you're starting off, it makes you almost sick to your stomach to get on the phone and dial and think of what's the seller going to say, how are they going to react, all that kind of stuff. And it's only through doing it that you get over that. Dialing, nobody got into this business to make cold calls.
Yeah. And maybe he doesn't like to be critiqued. Maybe, because we critique you. We listen to your calls and we critique, and we tell you, hey, when they said this, you should have said this. And when they said this, you should have said this. Some people may shut down after that. Maybe they just maybe they just don't like to be told that they're doing something wrong. Who knows? Anyway, let's pivot to game plan. Our game plan today is going to be a sub 2 and how our associates should treat houses that, because we're going to be running into that, right? Because there's people that have high loans with high interest rates, right? That may not have a whole lot of equity, right? They want to move out. So how do we calculate talking to a seller? Because sellers, obviously they overinflate what they want for a price of their home. Most of the time, most people, it's not 2020 or 2021 where prices were just inflated. People were coming in overbidding. That rarely happens. There are periods of time throughout the history where you have a really spike in home prices. People overbid. You have these bidding wars. It's leveled out. Since 22, 23. Once the interest rates went high, it becomes more of I wouldn't say it's a buyer's market. I wouldn't say that. It's more of a seller's market. Who knows what kind of market it is? What market are we in right now?
I think it depends on the area you're in.
That's true. Yeah. So describe how we talk to sellers and what they're going to walk away with. Because in our business, right, in our four game plans, we're looking at how much equity we're going to pay out the seller at a future date.
Right.
We want to get that. We want to get that equity. So how do we describe that to the seller?
So what you've got to do is figure out what the seller is going to net. If he's selling it, he's on the market, he's got a mortgage. If they're on the market for, say, 700,000, well, they're going to be paying. They might get 97. We use a number of 97%, which seems to fit pretty well in most areas. So they might get 97% of their asking price, assuming your asking price is on target.
Okay, so you said 700. I did quick math. So 97% of that is 679. Okay, so what's your 679? So, hey, Mr. Seller, most buyers are going to come in at 2 to 3% lower than you're asking. So this is what you're actually, looking at. Keep going.
Right. And that's before realtor commissions. Now we'll figure, most of them do anywhere from 5 to 6%. We'll use 5%. So knock off another 5% off of that.
So 679 times 95%, correct?
Right.
So now you're looking at 645.
Correct. So you're looking at 645. So they're going to automatically get $65,000 on $55,000 less than the 700.
Yeah. And if they have a mortgage, let's say they have a mortgage of 630, because they just got it in 2023 and they have a mortgage of 630 and it hasn't really appreciated that much, you know, they're looking at netting 15,000, right?
Right.
Right. Where they thought it was 70,000 in their head, they thought it was 70.
Right. And then they're going to be paying closing costs.
Right. That's another 1.5. So it's times 995. So 641 total. So they're coming away at $11,000. They're going to net $11,000 if they sold it traditionally. Right.
So yeah. So obviously we can do better than that. And you've got to make them realize that, when they say 700, I want 700, not taking a penny less. Well, that's not what you're going to net. We can net you more than that just right off the bat.
Right. And then that's not taking into account that, 2 months later or 3 months later, the realtor comes back to you and says, hey, we need to lower the price because we're not getting any action. Right. But now you're almost at a break even. Right. So describe that as far as buying. So, because I started out with this is a sub 2, right? Why would this be a sub 2 rather than a lease purchase if they had a mortgage?
Well, if you have a lease purchase, you're going to be making the mortgage payments. Bottom line, just going to be making those mortgage payments.
Right.
Yes, you're locking in their equity on a lease purchase. You're basically doing the same thing on a sub 2, but you're taking over the mortgage payments making the mortgage payments on their behalf, and the deed transfers. Well, it can, depending on how you do it. Sometimes it doesn't, but ultimately you own the property. So that's in your best interest to do that anyway. And yes, you're going to be paying the taxes and the insurance and everything else on top of it. But ultimately you're helping the seller get their essentially full price, because that's what they would have netted anyway.
Right. So, yeah. So, we're buying the house subject to the existing mortgage. And then, it might not be 11 or 15 like we described, but it's not going to be the 70 that they thought they were going to get. Right. Because that's what we're telling the seller. Like, hey, hypothetically, what we're hoping to walk away with as far as a net, we wouldn't pay the full 700. Right. We would buy it subject to the existing mortgage and maybe agree on 30,000 and say, okay, well, you're going to walk away with some money, but not today. It's going to be down the road, 48 months, but you're going to be done with the property. You can move on to your life. Now, if they were hoping to have that 30,000 up front to move on and do something, that 30,000, is that something we could do as like a down payment?
Yep, you could. You wouldn't do it on a lease purchase because we don't own property, but on a sub 2, and we call it a sub 2 owner finance hybrid, where you're doing an owner finance on the equity portion. But if you're doing the down payment, from our perspective, it's going to be your billing principal. It's a principal pay down is essentially what it is. You're getting that on the back end. But the seller, whether they need it for moving expenses or whatnot, yeah, it helps them out even that much more.
Yeah. And if we're buying sub 2, we're buying that and it's indefinite, right? There is no end date if we give them their money up front, right, with a down payment. Hypothetically, if they wanted 30K, we'll say, okay, here's 30K. Now we own the house. Now it's subject to the existing mortgage. We tell the seller, we're going to pay that mortgage off whenever. We don't know. There is no end date on that. And they have to be okay with that. They have to be okay with, having that mortgage still in their name. Now, if we're servicing their loan, and we can talk about that, if they wanted to go buy, and get another loan, some lenders will look at us servicing the loan as it doesn't go against our DTI, correct? Is that accurate?
Yep. Some, depending on, you got to shop around. Some will give you 70% and some will give you 100. It just depends.
Right. Yeah. Cause some people are worried about that. Like, well, the mortgage is still in my name. I won't be able to go buy another home. That's not the case. Like, again, some lenders will view us us servicing that loan as that it would not go against their debt to income ratio, and they could get another loan. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, there's all kinds of ways to buy these homes, subject to with the owner financing component to it. Buying is subject to with no equity, where we're just taking over their mortgage, so they can just be done with the home, right? A lot of that is like military, right? Because a lot of the militaries, they buy homes with no money down, right, with their VA loans, and so they have no equity, right? And if they don't need that entitlement for their next home, it's actually a good thing because we can save them for a couple of years, and then we can pay off their mortgage, and then they can get their entitlement at a later date, right? Yeah, good stuff. Let's go. Let's get to our cool down, Rick. We had somebody in our community, and this goes to what we do as coaches on the side, right? We do weekly calls. We do our office hours. We have our mastermind. We will do 3-way calls for the associates. We'll call in while they're at the appointment. So these are things that we do as coaches in the community. The community sees us doing that. But what they don't see is kind of the behind the scenes when someone in the community is struggling with their business, and how we personally reach out to them and kind of not reel them back in, but just because you don't want to say, suck it up, figure it out, get on the phones, right? Because the person we're talking about is going through a lot emotionally, right? And so you want to be delicate when you're talking to someone who's
right. It's more about understanding where they're coming from and what may be causing some of this, and offering, if nothing else, just to talk through it. Because some of us have been through it. And in this particular case, I don't know who's been through it, but anyway, yeah, Chris, we always tell people, especially if they've been around for a while, if you're having mindset issues or you're having struggles, to reach out, not just let it sit inside you. And, Chris let us know, and he addressed it directly with that person, and also had each of us reach out, asked each one of us to reach out, which we did.
Yeah. What she was going through, I couldn't relate. No, neither could you. But I did share a story, because both of us, right, our parents both passed away recently, and we both were taking care of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you moved up there, or you for at
You know,
least
pretty close to it. I was up there.
pretty close. But I was commuting. I was commuting to my mom's house, 3 or 4 days a week to take care of her. That affected my personal business. I was able to still coach, right? And I was still coaching, but I wasn't getting after it in my own
Right.
business. And
Your
it was hard. It was hard mentally because, I have my mom that I want to take care of. She's family, but I also have a business that I need to run. And I didn't want to feel like a hypocrite as a coach, where I'm coaching these people to how to buy a house when I'm not doing it on my own, right? So I let that bother me. I let that get to me. And so I tried to relate that to her, because it's not, I guess it's similar. We both were having issues with getting on the phone and working the business when you have all this personal stuff going on behind there. And that's going to happen. Like, you're going to have personal issues in your life. How do you navigate through that? Right. And I think that's kind of where she might be at.
Yeah. And I think the important thing is as a community, we're there for each other, especially if you're going after it and all of a sudden you hit a brick wall. The best thing you can do is reach out to one of us, and we're all here for you.
Yeah, because we've all hit the brick wall. Because it's not, if it was all roses, then everyone would be, buying houses on terms. Terms is not, real estate in general is not easy, and terms is not, it's lucrative. We talked about it before. It's lucrative, right? The return on your investment is very, very high. It's just, it's difficult, and there's going to be peaks and valleys, right?
Right. And, not only being lucrative, it's very rewarding because you're helping, sellers, you're helping buyers, and then you're helping your own family. So There's a lot in it, but it's important that we all stick together and help each other through. This happens somewhat often where people go through stuff, and that's okay. We all do. Any entrepreneur does.
Yeah, and you alluded to it earlier. People will buy franchises, right? Franchises, and I think that I'm not sure what the statistic is, but when someone buys into a franchise, the amount of years it takes to even break even is very, very high. You know, it could be 4, 5, 6, 7 years before they even break even, right? And buying a franchise is almost, some franchises cost as much as our coaching program, right?
Costs more.
Right. And
Yeah.
so our success rate and the return on investment is so much higher in this community. Some people don't realize that, and they give up, right? They're like, oh, I didn't get a deal within the first 6 months, and they just stop rather than just persevering, putting their head down, getting through those mental issues, right? And they quit instead of reaching out to me and you who have been through it before, and to figure out, hey, I'm going through this. And it's not like we are very public and saying, hey, if you need us, call. We don't ignore people, right? I don't know if you, I had never seen a coach ever have somebody reach out to him to say, yeah, I'm not going to reach out. I'm not going to call this person back. We reach out, we call them right back. And we, we're clear, blunt, to the point. We're going to be honest with you, right? Just like Chris was honest with you. And Chris has been honest with me multiple times, because I've had some mindset issues with a property that didn't go well. And he's like, dude, snap out of it. This is what happens in business.
I do. We do our nightly accountability. I left a voice text from Chris 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Even I was having some mindset issues, and I told him. And he said, let's talk in the morning. So we got on the phone and chatted through it, and he was blunt to the point, but he was right. So it helped me through it. But that's what it took.
Yeah. So that's what I love about this community is the coaches care. I'm not sure. And I'm not saying other programs don't care. I don't see what we do. What we do is a lot different, I think, personally. I could be biased, but I just know, I know you, I know myself, I know Mike, Chris. If someone's having an issue, we're on it.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you want to see people succeed. That's ultimately.
Yeah. It brings us joy, right? When someone gets a house under contract, you and I are going, because it's competitive, right? And I think you're leading this trimester, but I'm on my way with a couple associates getting deals, so I'm going to catch you for sure. All right, everybody, good stuff. We just got off the In the Trenches boot camp, right, Rick?
Yep.
I'm sure it went well. We have another one in August. So if you guys are listening and you want to go to the In the Trenches boot camp, click on the link in the show notes. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Rick, thank you, buddy.
Yeah, and the ITTB, just to give you an idea of community, I was setting up the Zoom and had my cup of coffee and went like this and dumped the cup of coffee all over my laptop, the full cup. And about 5 people jumped with paper towels.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, you have a lot of people that care.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Does your laptop still work?
It works. I think I lost one display for it because I can't get it to come on. But other than that, it works fine.
Oh, there you go. We have to get wicked smart to pitch in and get you another one. All right, buddy. Take care. We'll see everybody. All right. Bye.
Take care, everyone.